The invitation came wrapped in the false warmth of familial obligation, delivered over a crackling phone line that did little to mask the strain in my son's voice. "Mom, we're throwing a big barbecue at the ranch for your 72nd birthday," Nathan had said, his tone overly bright, like a used car salesman pitching a lemon. "It's gonna be a real Montana blowout. We want to treat you right, Evelyn. You deserve it." I could hear his wife, Cassandra, in the background, her sharp voice cutting through like a barbed wire fence. "Tell her it's exclusive. Only the best people." I smiled thinly at my reflection in the kitchen window of my modest Bozeman bungalow. At 72, I was a woman who had learned the power of silence. My silver hair was cropped close, practical yet elegant, framing a face etched with lines from decades under the wide Montana sky. My denim shirt and worn boots spoke of a life rooted in the land, not flash or pretense. I was Evelyn Harper, retired rancher, widow, and, unknown to my son and his ambitious wife, the silent majority owner of the Lazy H Ranch, the very property they were now using as their stage. The Lazy H was a legend in Gallatin County, 10,000 acres of rolling grasslands and rugged hills, a cattle empire that had been my life's work. I'd built it from a struggling 500-acre spread in my 20s, turning it into one of Montana's most profitable operations. I sold it a decade ago to a corporate outfit, wanting a quieter life after my husband, Tom, passed. But corporate mismanagement had nearly ruined it, and 3 years ago, I quietly bought it back through a trust, keeping my name off the paperwork. Only my wealth manager and my foreman, Jack Ramsey, knew the truth. To the world, including Nathan and Cassandra, I was just a retiree living on a modest pension in a cozy house with a garden full of wildflowers. Nathan and Cassandra had leased the ranch from the trust last year, believing they'd struck gold by saving it from foreclosure. They saw it as their ticket to Montana's elite, a backdrop for their social climb. Cassandra, with her manicured nails and designer Stetsons, had been boasting about their acquisition for months, oblivious to the fact that I could have reclaimed the ranch with a single phone call. The irony was a bitter, private amusement as I climbed into the back of their gleaming SUV, the leather seats reeking of new money and Cassandra's floral perfume. "Are you excited, Evelyn?" Cassandra asked from the front, not turning around, her eyes glued to her phone as she posted photos of her latest outfit. She called me Evelyn, never Mom, a deliberate choice that kept me at arm's length. "This barbecue is a big deal. We've got senators, ranchers, even that tech guy from Bozeman. I had to pull strings to make it happen." "It sounds wonderful, dear," I said, my voice soft, measured. I gazed out the window at the familiar landscape, golden fields stretching to the Bridger Mountains, the sky a vast, unyielding blue. This was my land, my legacy, and they were playing house on it. Cassandra snorted. "Wonderful doesn't cover it. This is the event of the season. You're lucky to be here." Her tone suggested I couldn't possibly grasp the social weight of the occasion. She was a vision in a tight white dress and turquoise jewelry, every inch a modern cowgirl, though I doubted she'd ever touched a calf. Nathan, gripping the wheel, was a study in quiet stress, his handsome face tight, his cowboy hat slightly askew. He was my boy, but he'd always been a follower, easily swayed by Cassandra's relentless ambition. They were a pair chasing a lifestyle they couldn't sustain, and I suspected they saw my modest savings as their safety net. We pulled up to the ranch's main gate, the Lazy H's iron brand gleaming in the late afternoon sun. The ranch house, a sprawling log structure I'd designed with Tom, was decked out for the barbecue, string lights, hay bales, and a massive tent filled with linen-draped tables. A band played soft country tunes, and the air smelled of smoked brisket and whiskey. Guests in pressed jeans and bespoke boots mingled, their laughter loud and performative. Cassandra swept out of the SUV like a queen, Nathan trailing her, and I followed, a quiet figure in my simple denim and boots, unnoticed among the glitterati. "Welcome to the Lazy H," Cassandra announced to a group of guests, her voice carrying over the crowd. "We're so thrilled to share our home with you." Our home. The word stung, but I kept my face serene, nodding politely as Nathan introduced me to a senator who barely glanced my way. They led me to a prime table near the tent's center, a spot with a view of the entire event, my event, though they didn't know it. The barbecue was a spectacle of excess. Platters of ribs, prime rib, and cornbread, a whiskey bar with bottles costing more than most folks' monthly rent, and a dessert table groaning under the weight of artisanal pies. Cassandra played the perfect hostess, her laughter sharp, her eyes scanning for the next important guest. Nathan hovered at her side, forcing smiles, his anxiety palpable. I sat quietly, sipping iced tea, observing the dance of ambition around me. This was my ranch, my vision, restored to its former glory after years of neglect. I'd spent months working with Jack to bring it back, and every detail, the reclaimed barnwood tables, the wildflower centerpieces, was mine. But to Nathan and Cassandra, I was just their quaint, out-of-touch mother, a prop in their performance. As the sun dipped below the hills, casting a golden glow over the proceedings, Cassandra's performance hit its stride. She summoned waiters with a snap of her fingers, critiquing the temperature of the whiskey, the plating of the appetizers, the tempo of the band. Each complaint was a public assertion of her superiority, a way to remind everyone she was in charge. I winced at her rudeness, but the staff, many of whom I'd hired, handled it with professional grace, their eyes flicking to me with subtle recognition. "Evelyn, you're so quiet," Cassandra said, sliding into the seat beside me, her smile tight. "Don't you have anything to say about all this?" She gestured at the tent, the guests, the opulence, as if I should be dazzled. "It's lovely," I said, my voice calm. "You've done a fine job." She scoffed. "Fine. This is world class. People would kill for an invite." Her tone implied I was too simple to appreciate her triumph. I smiled, letting her words slide off me like water off a slick rock. My calm seemed to irritate her, a quiet challenge to her need for control. Nathan joined us, his face flushed from too much whiskey. "Mom, how's the garden doing?" he asked, his go-to neutral topic when Cassandra's tension became too much. He didn't care about my wildflowers, he just wanted to keep the peace. "It's thriving," I said, my eyes on the horizon. "The lupins are especially beautiful this year." He nodded absently, his attention already back on Cassandra, who was waving over a waiter to complain about the ice in her drink. I watched them, my son and his wife, and felt a familiar ache. I'd raised Nathan to be strong, to love the land, but he'd chosen a life of appearances, tethered to a woman who saw the world as a ladder to climb. I'd kept my wealth a secret to protect him, to give him a chance to build something real, but I was beginning to see I'd only enabled his weakness. The meal was exquisite, a testament to the chef I'd personally selected. My plate of smoked brisket and roasted vegetables was a work of art, the flavors rich and honest, a taste of the Montana I'd poured my life into. But Cassandra found fault, as I knew she would. "The brisket's a touch dry," she announced loudly, poking at her untouched plate. "And these potatoes, undercooked." The guests at our table nodded along, eager to please her, but I caught the chef's eye across the tent. He gave me a small, knowing nod. He knew the food was perfect. I reached for my glass of iced tea, my fingers brushing the heavy crystal tumbler. It was a small miscalculation, a moment of distraction as I watched a hawk circle above the hills. The glass tipped, spilling its contents across the white linen tablecloth, a cold wave spreading toward the empty space beside me. It was a minor accident, the kind that happens at every gathering, but Cassandra seized it like a predator spotting prey. "Oh my God!" she shrieked, leaping to her feet, her voice slicing through the hum of conversation. "Evelyn, what have you done?" She clutched her dress, pristine and dry, as if I'd doused her in acid. "This is a $3,000 dress. It's ruined." Heads turned, the band faltered, and the tent fell silent. Guests stared, their faces a mix of curiosity and discomfort. A young waiter rushed over with napkins, but Cassandra waved him away, her eyes blazing with theatrical outrage. "This is a disaster," she wailed, addressing the crowd. "I planned this perfect evening, and now it's ruined because of her." Nathan, red-faced and sweating, muttered, "Mom, it's okay, just." "Okay," Cassandra snapped, turning her fury on him. "This is the Lazy H, Nathan, not some backwoods picnic. We have standards." She pointed at me, her manicured nail trembling. "She's a mess. She shouldn't even be here." The words were a slap, sharp and deliberate. I was no longer Evelyn, no longer family, just a clumsy old woman who didn't belong in her curated world. I sat still, my hands folded in my lap, my face calm. I could feel the eyes of the staff, my staff, watching, waiting for my signal. But I gave none. I let Cassandra's performance play out, her voice rising, her accusations growing uglier. "She's embarrassing us," she hissed to Nathan, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Get her out of here before she ruins everything." Nathan's eyes met mine, and I saw not defense, not love, but a desperate plea for the scene to end. "Mom," he whispered, his voice cracking, "maybe it's best if you go home. You're making things difficult." The betrayal cut deep, a wound that bled quietly. My son, my only child, had chosen his wife's ego over me. I looked at him, at the man I'd raised, and felt something break, a soft, maternal thread that had held us together for 40 years. In its place was a colder, stronger resolve. I was done protecting him from his own choices. Cassandra, sensing victory, turned to a nearby waiter. "You," she snapped. "Get your manager. I want her escorted out. Now." The waiter, a young man I'd hired last summer, hesitated, his eyes flicking to me. I gave him a small nod, and he scurried off. Cassandra smirked, crossing her arms, believing she'd won. Nathan stared at the tablecloth, unable to meet my gaze. The tent was a theater now, and I was about to change the script. Jack Ramsey, my foreman and confidant of 40 years, appeared from the edge of the tent. He was a tall, weathered man in his 60s, his face carved by sun and wind, his denim jacket and Stetson as much a part of him as his quiet loyalty. He moved with the unhurried grace of a man who'd faced blizzards and stampedes, his boots silent on the grass. The crowd parted for him, sensing his authority. Cassandra straightened, expecting an ally, but Jack didn't look at her. He stopped a few feet from our table, his hands clasped behind his back, and fixed his steady gray eyes on me. "Boss," he said, his voice a low, respectful rumble that carried across the tent. "There's a situation here. How do you want it handled?" The word, "boss," was a thunderclap. Cassandra's smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of confusion. Nathan's head snapped up, his brow furrowed. The guests murmured, their curiosity sharpening. Jack's use of the title was deliberate, a signal that shifted the power dynamic in an instant. I was not a guest. I was not a problem. I was the owner of the Lazy H, and they had just crossed a line they couldn't uncross. Cassandra laughed, a sharp, nervous sound. "What did you call her?" "Boss. That's ridiculous. She's just..." "Madam Evelyn Harper," Jack interrupted, his voice calm but unyielding. "Sole owner of the Lazy H Ranch. I'm her foreman, and I answer to her. So I'll ask again, how do you want this handled?" The color drained from Cassandra's face, her perfectly contoured cheeks going pale. Nathan's mouth opened, then closed, his eyes wide with shock. The tent was silent, every guest hanging on the moment. I let the silence stretch, savoring the weight of their realization. They had thought me a frail old woman, a burden to be managed. Now they saw the truth, and it was crushing them. I stood slowly, my movements deliberate, my denim shirt and boots suddenly carrying the weight of a queen's robes. "Thank you, Jack," I said, my voice soft but clear, cutting through the tension. "I'll handle it from here." I turned to Cassandra and Nathan, my gaze steady. "You seem surprised," I said, my tone neutral, almost gentle. "Let me clarify. This ranch, every acre, every fence post, every blade of grass, is mine. I built it from nothing, sold it when I thought I was done, and bought it back when I saw it suffering. I've been running it quietly through Jack and my trust, letting you play your little game of ownership because I thought it might teach you something. Clearly, I was wrong." Cassandra's jaw trembled, her eyes darting to the guests, who were now openly staring. This can't be true," she stammered. "You're retired. You live in that little house." "My house," I said, cutting her off, "is a choice. A deliberate one. I didn't want my wealth to define you, Nathan. I wanted you to find your own way, to build something real. But all you've built is a house of cards, propped up by my money and your wife's ambition." Nathan's face crumpled, a mix of shame and disbelief. "Mom, I didn't know." "You didn't ask," I said, my voice hardening. You never asked about my life, my work, my sacrifices. You assumed I was small, manageable, a prop for your performance. And tonight, you let your wife humiliate me in my own home to impress people who don't matter." Cassandra found her voice, a weak, defiant squeak. "This is outrageous. We leased this ranch fair and square. You leased it from my trust," I said, my tone final. "And as of this moment, that lease is terminated. You have 30 days to vacate the property. You'll find the paperwork waiting at your lawyer's office." The guests gasped, their whispers a low hum. Cassandra's eyes widened, her hands clutching the edge of the table. Nathan looked like he might be sick, his hands twisting his napkin into knots. I turned to Jack, who stood waiting, his expression unreadable but his loyalty absolute. "Jack," I said, "please ensure our guests enjoy the rest of the evening. But Nathan and Cassandra are no longer welcome at this table. Escort them to the edge of the property." Jack nodded, stepping forward. "This way, folks," he said, his voice calm but firm. Cassandra sputtered, her face a mask of fury and humiliation, but Nathan grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the exit. The crowd parted, their eyes following the couple's walk of shame, the band striking up a new song as if to punctuate their departure. I didn't watch them go. I walked to the edge of the tent, where the hills stretched out under the twilight sky, my hills, my land. Jack joined me, handing me a glass of whiskey from the bar. "You okay, boss?" he asked, his voice soft. "I will be," I said, taking a sip, the burn grounding me. "Thank you, Jack, for everything." He nodded, his eyes on the horizon. "They'll survive, might even learn something." I hoped he was right, but I wasn't holding my breath. The barbecue continued behind me, the laughter and music returning, but I stayed where I was, rooted in the land I'd fought for. Nathan and Cassandra would face their reckoning, financial, social, personal. I'd given them every chance to be better, but they'd chosen arrogance over family. Now, they'd learn to live without my shadow to shelter them. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was swift. Nathan's consulting business, propped up by my quiet subsidies, collapsed. Cassandra's social media, once a parade of curated luxury, went silent. They moved to a small apartment in Missoula, their dreams of Montana royalty in tatters. I heard through mutual friends that they fought constantly, their marriage fracturing under the weight of their shared failure. I returned to the ranch, not as a guest but as its heart. I spent my days with Jack in the hands, rebuilding what had been neglected, mentoring a young rancher named Maria, who had the grit and vision I'd once had. She was my new legacy, a chance to invest in someone who valued the land, not the spotlight. One evening, a year later, as I sat on the porch watching the sun set over the Bridgers, a letter arrived. It was from Nathan, a single page in his messy scrawl. "Mom," it read, "I'm sorry. I've got a job now, a real one, driving trucks. It's not much, but it's honest. I'm trying to be the man you wanted me to be. I hope someday you'll forgive me." I folded the letter, my heart heavy but not softened. He was trying, and that was something. But the road to redemption is long, and I'd learned the hard way that trust, once broken, doesn't mend easily. I turned my gaze back to the land, my true home, and let the quiet of the Montana night wash over me. The Lazy H was mine, and I'd spend my days ensuring it thrived, not for Nathan or Cassandra, but for those who understood its worth.